Now in this exercise we are going to set up Liferay on a Wildfly server to demonstrate how to set Liferay up on a full-fledged enterprise server. As we are distributing the server with this training, the only chance we have to distribute them is if we use the open source servers, and Wildfly is a very good choice for that. We are in our home DevOps folder, which is the unzipped exercises folder, and there we have a directory Wildfly. And I'm already fully prepared. I have CD'd into this directory already, and we can see what we are looking for here. If you look at the instructions, you will find numerous instructions on how to change several files. I will go a little bit shorter and quicker here and take several shortcuts by just tapping into the solutions that we have as well. However, I'm going to show you what you will look at. First of all, if we are looking at the Docker file for Liferay Wildfly, this has a bunch of instructions commented out, also up here, and many of the instructions tell you how to configure the individual instructions so that down there the unzip and mkdir and copy instructions will work. Well, if I'm closing this, what will we do? I will give you a short diff of our solutions Docker file with Liferay Wildfly Docker file. And here's where you see all of the changes. Everything with a line in the middle is changed. So we're just setting several directories in here, or several variables, several environment variables here. And later on, we'll also just remove several of the comment symbols or commentings here, basically making this a proper Docker script. Largely, it's removing the comment signs, but you will have to think a little bit because, well, there are instructions in here that you need to actually change. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this Docker file over to this location. From the solutions, I'll copy and I will overwrite the destination yes. Now, this is what I'm going to do in this Docker file. Now, let me get rid of the changes here. We can actually now look at this Docker file. What do we have here? We're setting several environment variables. We go to opt Liferay, then we look at etc. Liferay downloads. All of that is well described in your written material, and I don't want to go through every single item here. What you will see is there is a dependencies file, which means we now have to take care of a lot more of the setup compared to the bundle installation of Tomcat, where everything is done. Liferay's distribution is separated out into several parts. There is, for one, the web archive, the WAR file. There is the OSGI file, which is a zip file, or the OSGI directory comes to be downloaded in a zip file. And there's some dependencies which need to be deployed to the global class path of an application server. And they all need to be put into the proper locations. Of course, in order to do so, we are going to configure and install additional software in our virtual machine, which is quite minimal. This is the OpenJDK minimal machine, and we're going to create a few users as well, or actually just one user, one group, to have an unprivileged user, just like we had with Tomcat. And then in the end, we're going to copy several files onto the Wildfly installation, run several tars and unzips and so on, and then we copy several of the configuration files, module standalone, portal X, and activation key. Now, looking at it, what do we have here? There's module XML. This is a Wildfly file. If you know Wildfly, then take a look at it. Same with standalone XML and standalone.conf. And then we have Liferay's Portal X properties. Let's look at that. This is very basic. We'll just disable the startup wizard, but we don't really configure too much here. We'll only make the GoGo shell available for us. And what that means in particular will be part of one of the future chapters where we are talking about how to configure Liferay and what to do with it. Okay, coming back to the Docker file. Now we are copying all of these files, including the activation key, which we also have here, onto the proper Liferay home folder, and then we are basically done with this and we can start Wildfly. Okay, continuing with the exercises, with the exercise instructions. Let's look at the Docker Compose file that belongs to our Wildfly installation. This needs a little bit of work because, well, we didn't prepare everything for you. Let's look at what we need to do here. We'll need to configure the network, the build, the container name, the ports that we are going to map, and the volumes. Now you can see we're building a new network here, and in order to make it a little bit easier to install, we are actually installing Wildfly just on a local database, which is the HSQL database. This is not the same MySQL database as we have for Tomcat. And just to save some resources, just to free up some memory, I have also stopped my Tomcat installation to just spare some RAM, some memory. Now, Docker Compose, if I look at the solutions, we have the Docker Compose, the proper Docker Compose here as well, where everything is prepared, building the name, the build name, the container name, the networks, the ports that we're mapping, and note that Wildfly also deports to port 8080, just like Tomcat does, and we're mapping that to the localhost port 9090 on the host. And our GoGo shell is available on the standard port within the container, but outside of the container we'll make that 31311. And the volumes, just like before, we'll have the OSGI configs and we'll have Liferay's data directory outside. And this is what we're going to use. Now I'm going to copy this one and paste it on top level, which will overwrite the existing Docker Compose. Yes, I'll overwrite that, which will give me the warning in my editor, which I'll ignore, and I'll just close the file. Close nevertheless. Actually close everything here. Now my Docker Compose file is updated. This is now the proper file, and well, actually it's a little bit further because we also have fake SMTP, which comes a little bit later there. Okay, the instructions give you several steps in order to do so, but as you've seen, I've taken the shortcut. I'm the lazy one today. Now, what can I do now? I can now finally build my container. And you see our Docker file being executed here with all of the copies and unzips and install and updates and everything that we have in our Docker file. And in the end, we're going to run this container when it's done, but only when it's done. So I'm going to wait a little bit. Here we are, container is built, and let's go. Docker Compose up Liferay Wildfly. Let's run. I could have done that in the detached state, as the instructions say, Docker Compose up -d Liferay Wildfly, and then I could have tailed. Well, now we'll see our Liferay Wildfly starting up right here in my window. Do as you please. Just remember, if you now hit Control-C, that will stop the container. I now have it in my foreground. Now that Wildfly is started, let's look at our installation. which we'll find as we have mapped it on localhost 9090. And as this is a completely new installation, we don't have any existing database, but we are creating everything new. The only thing that we have configured is that we activate GoGo shell, which we're not using right now, and we have deactivated the setup wizard. So we'll end up with some default credentials, and as we didn't change them, they will be the default credentials. Let's look at them once this page is readily loaded. And here we are. Sign in. And we're there. We're logged in to our Wildfly installation. Okay, what are we going to do with it? Well, we're first going to stop it again because I'm not quite happy with the setup that we did so far, which means I'm going to stop the server and we're going into the next exercise right now. The next exercise will then bring us the JNDI configuration that we typically use on application servers like this. What does that mean? Well, if you look at the places where you can configure Liferay's database connection, for example, you can easily configure the database in Liferay's Portal X properties. This will then have clear text of the database connection, of the username, of the password, and you can guess that that's not too popular with the DevOps people, with the typical system administration people, which means we are going to move them over to the application server. Some of the application servers store them in an encrypted way or in some other way which is not immediately readable. In this case, we are configuring Wildfly with XML files to know which database to connect to. And while that is also keeping the database password in clear text on the disk, it is now in Wildfly's domain and no longer in Liferay's domain, which means, well, everything is fine for us. And we can also use other means of hiding, of encrypting the password if we really need that to. It's basically, after all, a demonstration that we can offload this to a proper container or application server configuration. First of all, if we look at Portal X properties, it is prepared a little bit because we can add the data source JNDI name here, and we can also add a mail session JNDI name here, which is exactly what we're going to do. And if I look at the solutions, I'll just open this file on top. Here you see the few changes. These are exactly the two names that have changed. This is the default JNDI name, which is JBoss JDBC Liferay connection pool. And for the mail session JNDI name, we have a Liferay mail session. Now, this is a configuration that we're going to do, and this is all documented in your written material. I'll just copy this again and paste it on top of this file. Sorry, it shouldn't have gone there. It should have moved in here. It will override the existing file. That's it. Now let's get the warning, reload, and everything is fine. My Portal X properties is there. And then we have the standalone file, standalone.xml, which we'll also have in here. This has a few more changes, so let's look at it. I'll just look at the diff. And remember, everything that has a marker here in the middle will be the changed rows. So I'll just fast forward page by page. Here you see that there is a marker actually here, Liferay sysadmin or DevOps start, add data source, JNDI name, driver, and so on, which we'll actually do here. And you see that we're using the demo data source instead of setting up another proper database. So we're just using HSQL with a username and password. And as I said, this is a Wildfly file. So on the Liferay side, we don't care too much about this. On the Wildfly side, yeah, this has username and password in clear text. I bet there are other options on Wildfly. However, this is a Liferay course and not a Wildfly course. Okay, let's continue here. We have yet another one with a data source configuration here, which is, let me see, where are we? We'll need to add the data source class to make it available. This is the part. And then I'm going to go page down, page down, page down, because everything here is identical. And we'll end up here where we insert the mail server or mail session JNDI name. We are going to use a mail server that is called fake SMTP. You can also find it here, which is a very simple server. It doesn't send out any mail to the internet. It will just intercept everything locally and then send the mail or just display the mail for your pleasure. Perfect for a test system. Absolutely not good for a live system, but after all, we're training here and we're setting up a test system. We want to send email to random accounts that doesn't irritate them. So as you can see here, not everything is actually ending up on the screen because I'm just using the simple diff tool, but you can actually look at your standalone XML in the solutions and look at the full file, or just look at the instructions in your written material. And I'll page forward, page down, and then we'll have the SMTP port here, another fake SMTP port, which we need to configure. And that's it. There's no more content in this file. You see that we make only a few changes to this humongous file. It's, after all, almost 31 kilobyte. Okay, let's call this a day for the standalone. And I'm going to copy it over into the configs file. I'm overwriting, and that's it. What have we done now? We have configured Liferay with the proper PortalX properties to watch out for a JNDI configuration and for a mail server configuration. So we have made this all available. The written instructions then tell us to update the Wildfly dependencies, as I have just the Wildfly dependencies within Docker Compose YML, which I have done so earlier by just copying everything into this file. Actually, have I? Let me see. I have not. So what I have done is I have configured Liferay Wildfly. And I have also already configured fake SMTP. What I did not do is to insert one line or a few lines which are depends on fake SMTP. Which means whenever our Liferay Wildfly is started, our fake SMTP container should be started as well. Save this, and we are good to build all of these servers. A little bit faster this time, and we'll need to build fake SMTP as well. If you're doing this the first time, it will download the raw image from the internet, but I have it already in my cache because I did it before recording this. Okay, let's start up. And this time I'm going detached. I'll just start Liferay Wildfly because it will automatically start fake SMTP. Remember the dependency that we have declared. So fake SMTP started, Liferay Wildfly started, and as you remember, it takes a while to start up Wildfly in the background. And in order to check this, I can go in here and then wait for it to be starting up. Localhost 9090 is where we'll find our Wildfly installation. And yes, here it is. Let's sign in. And once we're signed in, the exercises tell us that we should test our fake SMTP server. How do we do this? Well, I'm first going to look at the log files from that SMTP server by opening yet another console. And I'll just open the logs for my fake SMTP. So docker compose logs -f fake SMTP. And I will see my logs, my output from that server. And what we can do now is we can go into users and organization and create a new user, which will be test1 at liferay.com. And notice that you do not control the liferay.com email domain, nor do I. But I still can create someone with that email address. What does that mean? Well, in the end, I can save, and this user will have an email sent to them. And what we can see here is that an SMTP connection has been built into our fake SMTP server, and an email has been sent. Now, I'll currently leave it for you because the explanations in the exercises don't give us any more hints on how to actually get the email out of this fake SMTP server. But for now, it's important that the email has been sent through our fake mail server, not into the internet. And that's as good as it can be for right now. You have installed Liferay DXP on a full-blown application server on Wildfly as the open source version of one. And then we can use it, or we can look at any of the other servers that we can install. If you want to run and install Liferay on any of the other servers, just be aware of the instructions that you can find on Liferay's documentation site for the open source version on dev.liferay.com, and for the commercial version for Liferay DXP, it is on customer.liferay.com, and there it also includes all of the commercial application servers which are only supported by Liferay DXP, the commercial offering.